It's time for a Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did.
On Giants.com.
You know what I saw?
New York Giant pride.
And the Giants mobile app.
17-14 is the final. One touchdown, we are world champions. Believe it, and it will happen.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. Have some fun.
Welcome to Thursday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live here on Giants.com, the mobile app, as well as YouTube. It is presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. He's Paul Dottino. I'm Lance Medow with you for the next 60 minutes. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Multiple ways you can interact with us here on the program. You give us a ring, 201-939-4513. You can find us on social media, Twitter, hashtag Giants Chat. He is at Giants WFAN. I'm at Lance Medow, one word, last name, Medow. And as a reminder, you can find the archive of this show and our entire podcast network on the Giants mobile app, podcast platforms everywhere, and at Giants.com/podcast. As we welcome you into the Giants podcast studio, it is presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. So we are 2 days away from the preseason opener. Paul and I will give us a takeaway or two in terms of what to look for in that game. We heard from Abdul Carter and Jackson Dart, as well as Brian Dable earlier today, and then took in some of practice. Let's start off with the press conferences. Brian Dable spoke before practice, and he was peppered with a lot of questions about playing time and so forth, and gave his routine answers. Oh, he likes to needle the media, which is fun. It actually, I'm not comparing it. He's got a little bit of Tom Coughlin in him with the way he's going back at the media, no? Do you sense that a little bit?
Yes, because he likes to kind of stick them in the side.
Correct.
You know, like John likes to always give it to me.
Yeah,
too.
a little sarcastic flavor mixed in.
Especially with his hypotheticals. And then John loves to give me horrible hypotheticals just to kind of rankle me a little bit. Dave likes to do that.
Yeah, he got the better of a few media members, and it was all good and fun. Nothing personal, but at the root of what actually he said that had some meaning was he did claim and spelled it out loud and clear that Jackson Dart will play on Saturday, which is not necessarily a surprising development. He also indicated that any of the players that are dealing with injuries, and he doesn't specify at this stage of the season, he doesn't foresee them being Paul long-term, which is also positive and good news. And he was asked about really the pros and cons of playing your starters, how you go about navigating that. And what was interesting to hear was he said he's been studying other teams and other coaches in recent history. And the takeaway was that there really is not one route that you need to follow for positive developments, because he says that he's seen teams, they play 6 snaps amongst their starters, and other teams, they play 32, and there really wasn't a dramatic difference in terms of how the season started, because one of the things that he was trying to pinpoint, Paul, was the Giants have gotten off to slow starts, and is there any correlation between how you approach the preseason with your starters versus how you begin the year?
Right. He told us the other day he didn't think there was a right or wrong answer to this, and he kind of reiterated that earlier this morning by saying there's no definitive solution to getting off to a good start other than playing well. It does not appear, according to the stats and analytics, that there is a correct answer to this. I will say that Coach McDermott of the Buffalo Bills did announce to the Buffalo media that outside of Josh Allen, last year's MVP, he does expect to get his starter snaps.
And they have some young players, specifically on the defensive side of the ball, so I can understand that approach. And by the way, the Giants will be featured on Hard Knocks as a result of them playing the Buffalo Bills, since Buffalo is the team that is being put under the microscope during the course of the summer. But getting back to your point, no matter who's going to be out on the football field, I think the one thing also that Dable was emphasizing is we could sit and watch practice till we're blue in the face, and we do that. There is a distinct, first of all, difference in tone and speed during even a preseason game, Paul, versus a practice, and there's only so much you can simulate, and I think this was something that Dabes was emphasizing when he was speaking with the media today, by going through rep after rep, because defensive linemen have to stop on a dime. They cannot hit the quarterback. And he was talking about walking that fine line, Paul, and I thought this was interesting in the evaluation process. What do you put more emphasis in? Is it the high volume of practices, because there's a lot more practices, or is it the preseason games? And he was saying, you go back, you watch the film during practice, and you're playing the guessing game. Would it have been a sack? Would it have not been a sack? Could he realistically have extended the play and thrown it into the flat to the running back? Whereas in a game, there's no guessing because you're playing until the play is dead, period. There's conclusion there.
Very true. And even Jackson Dart admitted after Dable had spoke that with these extra extended plays that they do at training camp and at practice, you learn positive and negative things, both ways. On one hand, you learn the positivity of, hey, if you extend a play and you're running a scramble drill, maybe you can still make something good happen. At the same time, you also learn that something really bad could happen as well. So he said every time that they run one of those extended plays and they kind of hold the whistle a little bit, there's something to be gained from that. And he said doing it in game action under live bullets is certainly going to be another piece of his education.
And Dart and Abdul Carter will be exposed to at least a game setting early on.
Well, we don't know about Abdul Carter for sure. We think Abdul Carter is going to play, but we don't know. Well, Dabes would only say Dart was for sure.
Correct. Dabes did not acknowledge that, but this is me putting two and two together. We heard from Abdul Carter. He sounded like a man that was determined to play. I'll leave it at that. There's not a confirmation from the coaching staff, but I'd be surprised based on what he told reporters.
And by the way, when asked about maybe pulling back because it's a preseason game, he's like, no, you go all out. This is football.
Well, the specific question, I'm glad you brought that up, was he was asked, do you not want to show your full arsenal of moves given the fact that nobody has seen you on film in the NFL? They've seen you in college. Do you want to show X amount of spin moves or whatever? And Carter flat out said, I'm not thinking that hard. And I'm paraphrasing. He's just going to go out and he's going to play. He's not going to say to himself, well, I can't use this maneuver because I'm worried that it'll better prepare our opponent in week number 4. And I think that's the right philosophy to have.
Sure it is. And by the way, it's also a good idea for the Bills not to play Josh Allen under those very circumstances. I mean, would you want Abdul Carter barreling down on you like a double-decker bus?
So you're saying Mitchell Trubisky is the sacrificial lamb then, under those circumstances? You're not worried about him?
I would hope he has an ice tub ready after the game.
Well, I'm sure both guys and both facets of each team are saying that on the Bills and the Giants sidelines as we're gearing up for Saturday's preseason game. Dart was also posed a variety of different questions, Paul, about what he's hoping to get out of the game. Is he looking to make a statement? Is he looking for a specific situation to come up, whether it be a 2-minute drill, whether it be a 3rd and long? And he didn't hone in on a specific scenario, though I thought one of the most interesting things that came up in the conversation was he was asked about, well, Josh Allen went through Dabes' system. So have you had a chance to speak to Josh Allen before you're going to see him up close and personal? And he said that he spoke to him a few days after the draft, and they actually did converse, maybe not delving much into the scheme. He said Josh Allen's best advice was more about leadership and how to command the huddle and what you want to showcase to the offense, maybe more so than the X's and O's. And Dart was honest. He was asked about how difficult this system is because we hear a lot of offensive players who come from other teams say, wow, it's a bit convoluted. Dart said, well, I can't compare it to anything else. This is my first go-around in the NFL, and there's nothing more that he can say from that perspective. But I think with any rookie, whether it's Carter, whether it's Dart, you can't think too big picture. You got to really treat this as just a normal football game. You go out, you play ball, you put the film on the next few days, and you take the good and the bad. The more and more I think you overanalyze it going in and you treat it as if it's a Super Bowl, probably in all likelihood it's going to backfire on you.
Well, we know that Dart's best friend on the team is Tommy DeVito. They're very tight, very close. They have a terrific relationship, and he was asked, what has DeVito told you, about your first ever game? And he said that DeVito said, just go out there and have fun. That's it. Just go out and have fun and play. It's football. And then he also said here, which was interesting, a lot of people would think that there's pressure on the, quote, future franchise quarterback, right? Because you know as well as I do. He goes out and turns the ball over a couple of times. Chicken Little, the sky is falling,
sure.
Right? even though he's not supposed to play for the first year anyway. That's going to be some of the
There's going to be an
narrative.
overreaction, good and
Of
bad.
course.
Yeah.
Of course. Overreaction Monday, or in this case, overreaction Sunday, right?
Yeah.
The day after the game. He said flat out, he is not worried about making mistakes. Flat out. He's like, I'm going out there to have fun. I'm just going to play my game. And if I make any mistakes, fine. I'll learn from them. That's it. He was very, as a matter of fact, about it. So I don't get the sense, and maybe you felt the same, he does not feel any pressure about playing in his first NFL game, preseason or otherwise.
There is a calmness and a looseness, I think, to Jackson
yes.
Dart when he speaks, and also just the manner in which he approaches practice. You've seen him, whether it be a good play or a bad play, and there's really not much of an emotional reaction, Paul, from what I've observed. You know, he's not running down the field, high-fiving. Not that that's a bad thing. So I think that he understands how to turn the page. And if you approach it that way during practice, then it should roll over very smoothly during games. So I'm with you. I'm on the same page. That was my read on Dart. He's not putting the whole world on his shoulders and acting as if he needs to just ball out on Saturday to appease individuals who are high on him or quiet the skeptics, whatever it may be. And the truth is, whether Dart wows you or not, it's not going to, one quarter of action in the preseason is not going to change the approach of this coaching staff. It's not going to change the trajectory of the team's game plan, even going into the draft. So no matter what is said, no matter how loud people are going to scream it from the mountaintop, at the end of the day, it's not going to steer or change anything, whether it be in the short term or the long term.
See, that's part of the beauty of taking a quarterback near the bottom of the first round. When you take a guy at 25, you've got that emotional and psychological cushion from the narratives outside the building that say, well, if you pick a guy in the top 5, you better start him in week 1. There is no pressure on the Giants to start Jackson Dart. I mean, at least I don't sense it. Russell Wilson was brought in here to be the starting quarterback in 2025 unless something changes. Everybody knows that. It's one of the reasons why you didn't just bring in Jameis Winston as a grizzled veteran who can be a mentor, but you brought in a Russell Wilson who's been to 2 Super Bowls, who's been to 10 Pro Bowls, who has unquestioned credentials. Unquestioned. Nobody can doubt his credentials. He's the guy. He's number 1. That's it. I think that is a tremendous benefit for Jackson Dart. It allows him to be his loosey-goosey self, if you will, because nobody in this building, nobody is putting any undue pressure on him. It's like, kid, take your time. When you're ready, you're ready.
And that's why you brought in Russell Wilson, to remove that part of the dialogue and the conversation. Also, Dabes has been on the record multiple times saying Russell Wilson is the starter.
That's it.
See, if he maybe came out and said, well, we'll see how the summer goes, it's a bit of a competition, maybe that slight door is open. The door has been closed. It's been shut. It's been nailed into the wall 100 times.
I mean, think about this. If they didn't sign Russell Wilson, let's say they just went into training camp with Jameis Winston, Jackson Dart, and Tommy DeVito.
I think it changes things.
Changes everything. The narrative outside the building would be, definitely a competition for all 3 spots. The starting job is open. You know, you don't give anything to Jameis Winston. He's going to have to fight to hold off the first-round draft pick. And then if Jackson Dart gets in the game against Buffalo and has a couple of scoring drives, people are going to be screaming to make him the starter before the second preseason game.
I also think it changes the conversation internally. I'm not just looking externally. I think guys in the building maybe would also look at things differently. Teammates, no? I think Russell Wilson's
You
resume,
never know.
not taking
You
anything
never
away.
know.
I'm not taking anything away from Jameis Winston, but there is a distinct difference in terms of individual accolades and achievements between both of those quarterbacks.
Russell Wilson is a future Hall of Fame quarterback.
Yeah.
And I've said it about Eli 1,000 times. It's not true yet, but I'm going to say the same thing about Russell Wilson. Who knows when he'll get in, but the guy's credentials are as good as anybody's from the past 15 to 20 years.
Well, that's why his presence changes things.
It does.
Just him being in the building.
It was a brilliant move by the Giants to bring him in. That's why I've thought all along, once the whole Stafford thing came out and then that fell through, there was never a doubt in my mind that Russell Wilson was the next guy in line. The whole Aaron Rodgers thing was a bunch of hype coming from outside the building.
And we've seen other teams do something similar where they bring in a veteran so that they don't rush the timeline for other quarterbacks, whether it's Aaron Rodgers, Phillip Rivers, Patrick Mahomes. There's several different examples. There's no rush to put a guy on the field.
One other item from the pressers that I did want to get to before you went to the questions and our callers. Brian Dable said, and I asked him this point blank, about because you have a bunch of young guys on this team, a bunch of rookies, a bunch of untested fellas who are going to be in their first NFL game on Saturday. I mean, some of them are going to play. How much, we don't know. But what have you said to them to alleviate their nerves, to calm their butterflies? And he said, you know what? 2 days ago, I had a bunch of veterans get up in front of the team and talk to them and tell them about what to expect. Tell them how to act. Tell them how to deal with it. Russell Wilson was one of those guys. And Dabes felt that was important so that these guys can psychologically prepare and not get too lost in the heebie-jeebies, you know?
I was blown away by Russell Wilson's presser the other day.
Oh,
when
he was great.
He was reminiscing about his first preseason game. I don't know if you went back. I brought up the highlights from that game.
Oh, did you?
And I
Is it
tweeted
on
out.
YouTube?
Yeah, it's on YouTube because I wanted to see how close he was to recollecting.
Was he right on?
He was, pretty much spot on. He said that he threw the go ball to Braylon Edwards. It was down the left sideline. It was perfectly thrown. He was a little bit off.
Why wouldn't it be perfectly thrown? That's what he does.
Sure. But, come on. That is your first professional contest. And then the play that he described where it was a handoff fake right, and then he rolled to the left, and then his teammate was up ahead in the field blocking.
Yes.
That was pretty much accurate, too. I wouldn't say that Charlie Martin pancaked the individual that he was blocking, and he gave himself also 17 additional rushing yards on the touchdown.
Did he?
He said it was 49, it was 32. But still, the description, though, in all seriousness,
you know what they say.
The breakdown of the play was
It's always a line drive
impressive.
base hit in the scorebook, right?
Yes, if you want to spin it that way. But anyway, I thought it was pretty neat. And you could tell just even all these years removed, the excitement that he still remembers revolving around
He's
that game.
jacked up.
Yeah.
And he made it very clear to us, folks. We had this conversation the other day. He wants to play. He thinks it's not only beneficial for him to play in the preseason, but he thinks he can help his teammates by being there on the field and in the huddle during the preseason. I would just say that because of Russell Wilson's stature and the respect that this organization and this coaching staff has for him, they probably will give those desires and wishes a bit more consideration than if he was someone else of lesser stature.
And that's why every team and every player and every individual is not following the same script.
Right.
For that very reason, what you just mentioned.
Andy Reid just announced he's going to play Patrick Mahomes for the whole first quarter of their preseason game coming up this weekend.
And Paul, sometimes needs change from season to season. For all we know, Andy Reid, and I know they made it to the Super Bowl, they lost. There may be something that he feels the starters need to work on. And he wants to give Mahomes some additional work this preseason compared to what happened in previous years. There's nothing wrong with tweaking it. Dable says he goes through that process pretty much religiously, year in, year out. All right, I want to get to some YouTube questions as well as phone calls, so we're going to hit it on both ends in terms of our technology. Let's start with, Paul, some YouTube comments and questions because they really are twofold. Virtually Speaking Podcast writes, I definitely think they should rest Scadaboo, even if he says he's ready. I'd rather see him healthy in the regular season. And actually, Dabe's confirmed that they're not going to play him.
Well, anybody who's been gimpy and held out of practice, he's like, well, obviously they're not going to play.
So you don't have to worry about that.
Thomas, Scadaboo, and Slayton were on the side today running lightly with the trainers. I will mention that James Hudson, the third tackle who did leave practice early yesterday, was back in there taking some reps today. So that was good news for him.
Donald lays out goals for the Giants' first preseason game. He's got 3. Number 1, play the starters for just about the first half. Number 2, stay basic and play physical. Number 3, limited to no injuries. Well, number 3 is a no-brainer. I don't think anybody going in is hoping to lose personnel. Yeah, I mean,
that's good plan.
As far I know, going out on a limb there. As far as playing the starters for just about the first half, I don't see the main group of 11. Granted, not everybody's healthy. Going 2 full quarters, Paul. That to me is.
I don't either.
Yeah.
I mean, back in the semi-old days, you would see maybe 2 series or possibly a first quarter of reps for the starters.
Yeah.
But, it's been a long time. And, again, I got to go way back till you remember the days when, Phil Simms would play sometimes into the third and fourth quarter.
Well, the game has changed just a tad.
It certainly has.
Since then, yeah.
And there have been a lot more injuries, too.
So 1 or 2 series, perhaps, I think is more realistic. And as far as staying basic and playing physical, the other thing that we shouldn't lose sight on related to that comment is they don't game plan this early in the preseason for an opponent.
No.
So you don't even really have to worry about staying basic. They're going to run whatever the group is comfortable at this stage in training camp running, especially if it's rookies. I mean, they can't afford to get that fancy because they're not studying Buffalo for the last few days leading up to the game. So, Paul, there's only so much you're going in and scheming accordingly based on the personnel matchups.
Right. And let's not forget, I mean, especially in the second half, I think it's pretty safe to say you'll see a lot of guys deep on the depth chart getting almost all, if not all, of the second half reps. Well, how deep can you expect those guys to be comfortable and know the playbook? I mean, honestly, no. You can't go that deep. It's not practical to expect, let's say, that your fifth string safety, knows all the defenses.
Yeah. Plus, what also happens because of injuries in training camp practices in the preseason, it could become a little bit of a mishmash where guys who are on the second team move to the first team, and therefore they may have not had as many reps with that quarterback who normally doesn't run that offensive unit. That's the other thing to take into consideration, which is why you want to keep things as basic as possible because the timing is not where it needs to be, at least at this point. All right, one announcement here before we open up the phone lines with another impactful draft and free agency class in the books. That means it's full steam ahead to the 2025 season. You can take your fandom to the next level with a Giants season ticket membership. You can catch all the action at MetLife Stadium with an exciting home schedule on the horizon. With a membership, you will also stay connected to the club all year round, not just on game days with exclusive member access and benefits. To learn more about a New York Giants season ticket membership, visit Giants.com/tickets. As we are here on Thursday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, he's Paul Dottino. I'm Lance Medow. It's presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. We open up the lines. Donnie is in Queens as he gets us going here on BBKL. What's happening, Donnie?
Hey, guys. It's been a while. I haven't been able to call in too much recently. Thanks for taking my phone call.
Well, we hope everything's well.
Go ahead, Paul.
We hope everything is well.
Yeah, no problem.
Good.
The 2 o'clock time just isn't as conducive.
We'll talk to Coach Dable for you and try to get back to the earlier time next month, okay?
You're a busy man. We understand.
I wish he would be less coy about what he's doing with his lineup this weekend because I'm excited for the game. I'm personally in the camp of if they're healthy, they have to play.
Yeah.
This team has gotten up to such bad starts. And, can I prove that there's a correlation? I can't. But kind of like you guys said earlier in the show, and Lance mentioned it, like you just can't simulate football without tackling.
Yeah.
I go to camp a couple times every year, and I enjoy it. I bring my nephew. It's a good way for him to get closer to the game and pick out players and things like that. But it's just not football. It's as close as you can get, I guess. But it's not football. And I truly believe they should give their guys some time. And, I'll hang up at this. My thought is, Jackson should start. If he, or at least he should play with the guys he's taken the most snaps with. So if that means the second team is playing in the second quarter, that's when I would play him. With the guys that he's been out there playing with, is accustomed to throwing to, protecting his blind side and things like that. So just curious what you think about that. And one thing I did notice from camp, again, you take these things with a grain of salt, but they got to be scouring the waiver wire at defensive tackle. And I know Dexter hasn't really been participating much, but not very confident in what they've got around there. They need something a little more stable, and even in the trade market, if something comes up, they should definitely look into it. So really appreciate all the coverage this summer. You guys do a great job. I'll continue to listen, and I'll try to pop in before the season. Thanks.
All right, Donnie. Appreciate the phone
you.
call. Thanks for giving us a ring. I want to start with the Dart comment first, and then if you want to jump in with respect to defensive tackle. I think it's a fair point that you want Dart in, which is related to what I was talking about earlier with some of the guys that he's been working with during practice. But I would say with Dart, it's a little bit different. Considering he's a rookie, I think you like to test him in these circumstances and maybe put him in with individuals that he hasn't run as many plays, because there's going to be a point in his career where he's going to be thrown into the fire, whether it's in the midst of the game, not that you ever wish anything, and there's going to be something that perhaps he did not simulate during practice and he's ill-prepared for, and I think you want to maybe test the waters. So I don't have an issue if he gets thrown in with maybe a unit that he doesn't have a wealth of time thus far with.
I don't think this is the time to do that. I would actually take the opposite approach on this, because if you throw him out there with third and fourth string offensive linemen and it's total chaos, there's not much for him to learn except on how to run for his life. I don't think that's very productive. I think you want to give him, as the caller said, the opportunity to at least try to function under somewhat normal conditions, to see what he can do, what he can learn. And, he's taken a lot of second-team reps during the course of the offseason, so I think that's probably the most logical unit to put him with.
And I think that will happen, but I could see them maybe keeping him in a little bit longer where you start seeing some of the third stringers and the fourth stringers. And I think a lot of that also depends, Paul, on if the Bills are playing their third and fourth stringers. I wouldn't be as concerned if you have your third and fourth stringers. And meaning you don't want Jackson Dart behind the third offensive lineman going up against the Bills starters or their second line guys who are probably going to make the 53-man roster. That's not a great development.
Am I going out on a limb by suggesting the Bills' backups might be better than the Giants? That's a pretty good organization who's won a lot of games.
Sure, but I think once you start getting to the third and the fourth stringers,
I don't know.
I wouldn't think that the disparity is as huge as perhaps 1 and 2. I think there's a significant difference.
All right. I think we'll agree to disagree on this one. But as far as the second point, I forgot what it was.
Well, the second point was with respect to if they need to look at other options at defensive tackle.
Yes. Yeah. Lance brought this up earlier, and I think this is why you should not worry as much as you are out there, because there's very little tackling going on. In fact, there's none. Even these fully padded practices, the guys are told it's a thud practice. You come up to the guy, you make initial contact, and that's it. You can't tackle through him. So for those folks who have been reporting to you out there, looks like the Giants' rush defense isn't doing very well because, Tracy and Singletary and Motor and Turbo Miller are getting some gashing runs. Well, no kidding. The defensive guys know they can't go full force, they can't run through a guy, and they can't plaster him to the ground.
Yeah, they let him finish the play.
Brian Burns told us last week, he's like, I can't wait to get into a game because you guys have no idea what it's like to go out there, run a play, and be told you can't tackle. That's against every bone and ounce of blood in the body of a defensive player in the National Football League. Because not only do they have to physically pull up, but they also mentally and emotionally have to be aware, hey, I got to pull up. Because if I plaster that running back or that tight end or that wide receiver, coach is going to ream me out something bad. So you got to do what's unnatural to you as a player and pull up. So, you have to understand the full context of what's going on here before you say, well, it looks like they're running the ball well and the defense really isn't stopping the run a whole lot. No kidding. I mean, it's like having a car without wheels. Oh, it's really not racing down the highway very well. Really? Yeah, you get it? What can I say? I will tell you this. Roy Robertson Harris is a guy they have tremendous confidence in to help the interior of that defensive line. Darius Alexander right now is ahead in the pass rush stuff. Remember, he missed a lot of the offseason program.
Yep.
Little bit behind in the run stopping. But again, this is because they're not really able to work on that stuff. And so when he got caught from behind because of some dings earlier in the offseason, it cost him a lot of time. So I would not be as concerned as you've been led to believe. It may take them a little time. Maybe right out of the gate, they're not going to be, what they're supposed to be. Like we always say with everybody, it takes about 4 regular season games these days for a team to really show what it is that they've got. I would cool your jets a little bit on some of the stuff that you've been told.
And also, I know he's probably not going to play defensive tackle, but if we're just focusing on the guys up front, they're going to mix and match Chauncey Golston, too.
Sure.
Don't dismiss his value.
He's a good player.
Tremendous player with a lot of experience. And I thought he was one of the most valuable additions this offseason. I don't see why I should shy away from that, even well before the season starts, because you need glue guys. That, to me, is what I call him. He's a glue guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know exactly what you're going to get out of him. It's not as if he's going to blow you away with, a 10-sack season, but he's going to do enough things to help the guys around him, and you could plug him in just about anywhere, and he'll be comfortable. And you need a lot of those guys because I think the concern was if somebody goes down via injury, how good do you feel, especially based on last season when Dex went down, that there was a noticeable drop-off. Now, you're not going to get another Dex, okay? Let's not be naive, but you can get at least a cluster of talent that you can mix and match to help alleviate the gap a little bit.
They finally started to enhance the talent of the defensive line after the losses of Leonard Williams in a trade and then Ashawn Robinson, who went free agent.
Yep.
In my mind, they had not done a great job in replacing those guys in terms of their presence against the run.
And those two guys, the common element is seasoned veterans who have been in the NFL.
Big and strong, too.
Yeah, no doubt, who can eat up a lot of space. Let's head back to the phone lines. We got Abdul in Minneapolis here with us on Big Blue Kickoff Live. What's happening, Abdul?
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Doing right.
I'm sorry if I'm beating a dead horse here, but talking about playing starters in the preseason. I think one of the biggest shortcomings of Brian Dable is that his teams sometimes do not seem to come out prepared, or they start very slowly. Last season's opener against Minnesota was just embarrassing. They looked like they were, like one team was a professional team, the other team was not. And I think it's kind of a larger picture with the NFL in general, because I think Paul just said that it takes like 4 games at least to start playing really, really good football. And so I think it's imperative this year, especially with the new quarterback, because they don't have a lot of stressful situations during practice and stuff, is to get these starters as much game time as possible. So when they play Washington and Dallas the first 2 weeks, we don't start in an 0-2 hole, And I think if we are serious about this season and we want to actually compete and not, get Jackson Dart ready, get Russell ready, it's imperative that they play their players, the starters, I think, every single preseason game. A series or two, then ramp it up a little bit, then, the last game not to. But I think it's imperative, more so than any other season, because of Russell Wilson being new, that they play.
I think it really depends on the team. I don't think there's a rule of thumb that applies everywhere. And the reason why I'm saying that is I remember 2 years ago, Abdul, the Giants were playing the Carolina Panthers, as Paul maneuvers his technology.
Sorry.
If you heard that. And if you remember Daniel Jones and company, they were in there for the first series, and they just marched down the field, and everybody's reaction was, wow, this offense could be legit, could do a lot of damage, and then we know what happened during the rest of the season. Now, I understand there was maybe a little bit more continuity, which differs from your point, and I have no problem throwing out the starters, especially if Russ feels he wants a little bit more game action beforehand.
Yeah.
I wouldn't read so much into, even if they play, regardless of the results, that it's automatically going to carry over to a stronger start. I guess that's what I'm bringing back.
I guess the correlation is assumed, or but it just seems logically that the more a team plays together, the more in sync they are.
Correct. More and more comfortable with one another. Yeah.
So that's my 2 cents. I think it's been discussed enough. We will see, come Saturday, which I can't wait, by the way. I'm actually camping in the North Shore of Minnesota, and I found a bar in Grand Marais to watch the game. So I can't wait to do that. So second point, I really think the Giants, if possible, you should look at signing Will Hernandez. I just think that, if they want to be a great team like the Eagles would make that signing. They wouldn't go into a season with they try to get the best players on the field. And Will Hernandez, the past few years, was arguably one of the best guards in the league. I know he got hurt, and also, if I'm not sure if they can afford it, but I think they should move mountains to get that guy back on the Giants, because the interior line is the weakest part of the offense. Right now we have Greg Van Roten, and we're hoping Evan Neal is good. And I don't like hoping. I like more definite. More of a definite thing. So I see that he's been cleared to play, and again, it takes 2 to tango. He wants to keep, he has to, want to come here and be affordable. But I think the Giants should get Will Hernandez.
Real quick.
Third thing here, real quick. It's August 7th, and I'm going to wait until this week, this game. But I think the number one reason the Giants are not successful will be the run game. I still don't think they did enough in the offseason to patch the holes they had last season. I'm just not comfortable. But I'm going to wait until I see it before I really start panicking. So,
all right, Abdul. Appreciate the phone call. Yeah, I want to react to a few things. Number one, remember, there's John Runyon on the team, too. He was only focusing more on the right side, what's going on. Mm-hmm. So you still have Runyon at guard. Hernandez was just cleared because of the significance of the injury. It took him a very long rehab process. And there were actually reports the other day that he's already meeting with his former team, the Cardinals, and that they may just simply reunite because that team knows him better than anybody, considering that's where he played well. So I understand the last caller was speculating, but it's possible in a day or two he may not be available anymore because he may just return to Arizona. And I think from the Giants' perspective, Paul, and I would respond to this if anybody else calls up and throws out any other offensive lineman on the market, I think at this stage of where you are in training camp, you want to do everything in your power to continue to evaluate the guys in-house before you're going to turn to an external option. You go through the 3 preseason games, the waiver wire, you're not content? Okay, then I can understand you bring in like a Van Roten, who was a late arrival. Outside of that, I think they're going to do their due diligence of what they have currently here on the roster.
Not only do I agree with you, Lance, I also look at Runyon, Neal, and Van Roten as 3 guys fighting for 2 starting spots. If you're going to add somebody at this particular moment in time, you have to be 100% sure that the guy you're bringing in, and of course you have to make an agreement with him anyway, and he's got to want to come, and the money's got to be right and all that stuff. But aside from that, philosophically, you have to be sure that that guy you're importing is appreciably better than the options that you have in-house. Well, I don't think that's the case. I think Will Hernandez is a functional starting guard in this league. I don't think he's appreciably better than Runyon or appreciably better than Van Roten. I mean, honestly, if the difference is, 5.5 centimeters, are you really doing yourself a service by bringing in a guy at this point in time? No, you're not.
And he's got to learn a completely new offense, by the way, too.
No question. And then, of course, we talk about Evan Neal, and I'm sorry for all the people who've been down on Evan Neal over the years. I get that. But right now, training at guard, they seem to believe there is quite a lot of upside there. And certainly he's got more upside as we sit here today, at least in the Giants' eyes, than Will Hernandez, who is clearly a known commodity. There's no more upside to Will Hernandez. You've already seen the best he's got to offer.
Sure, but you also need to see whether or not he could get back to that level.
And we don't even know that either.
That he's coming off of.
Absolutely.
That's more of a reason why.
I'm sorry. I think there are a lot of reasons why the Will Hernandez suggestion just does not make any sense.
And as far as the run game, which is connected to that, yeah, that's going to be a huge facet to determine where this team goes. Now, you look at the arrival of Scadaboo, and hopefully he returns to full health, that he'll add a new dimension in terms of toughness, in terms of catching the ball out of the backfield. Because remember, the role the running backs play as receivers out of the backfield is an extension of the run game. So when people throw out the run game, it's not just conventionally what you're gaining on the ground, it's what your backs can do as a staple of the receiving core. That's how you have to look at it this season, too. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the area that may improve more so than maybe the pure yardage on the ground, Paul. I look at that as helping up what your overall rushing potential is.
Well, look, overall, I think we believe that just having Russell Wilson running the show back there is going to lift practically every facet of this offense. And, you know,
how they have to respect the quarterback and look at him differently. Yep.
Yes. Look, with all due respect, and we know, I'm a big Daniel Jones guy, but with all due respect, the way things crumbled with him last season after the first 5 weeks when it started to go downhill, defenses were not respecting the Giants' offense when they stepped on the field. There wasn't enough evidence to make them feel that way. And so defenses were clearly starting to cheat. And, we all know that that's just an absolute recipe for poison in the NFL. When defenses can start cheating against you, what are you going to do?
I want to go back to YouTube, a few questions/comments in terms of preseason NY2PA. I want to see the bubble players. We need solid backups. Then related to that, J-Fed, I'm okay playing Wilson and the starters who are healthy for a series or two, then the backups, bubble players. And I can assure you, you're going to see a lot of the backups and the bubble players because they need to evaluate to see who could separate themselves from the pack. So without any hesitation and question, you will be able to fulfill those wishes and then some. Logan Van Zant brings up a question about Cam Scadaboo. Does Cam having a full, very heavy load in college have any effect on the decisions with maintaining his injury this preseason? The simplistic answer I would say is no. I would not read into, and remember, he was 2 seasons at Arizona State. Prior to that, he was at community college.
Right.
So he had 164 carries in 23. It was up to 293 in 2024. For a college player, I mean, that's significant.
It is.
But Russell Wilson, I understand he plays a different position, Paul, but Russell Wilson has been in the NFL for over a decade, and he's running around, right? We're watching him extend plays, and I wouldn't say that workload makes him more susceptible to an injury. So I understand the point, and it's fair to bring it up, but I don't think that's the reason why he's sidelined at this stage.
If you're at all concerned about Scadaboo's durability, it would probably be more long-term with the style that he runs with, if he is going to be a really counted-on short yardage back and perhaps a goal line back. Well, over the course of time, those guys do tend to wear down and may have shorter careers or shorter primes because of those combinations of factors. That, to me, is about the only thing that I would say about his durability.
Like a guy, I don't know, he just popped into my head, so I'm bringing up Mike Allstott, who I understand was a bit of a fullback too, okay?
Yes.
But you saw towards the tail end of his career, the last few years, Allstott wasn't the same type of player he was because of the physicality that he ran.
Can I
with.
give you 2 other names,
Sure.
even more dramatic?
Yeah.
Christian Okoye,
Okay.
Pete Johnson, 2 guys who played bowling ball physicality with the football. And they flamed out a little quicker than I think a lot of people had hoped.
I'm looking up Allstott because I have him up.
And
so
he
that's
certainly
why,
applies.
Yeah, I'm sticking with at least that comparison. From 1996 to 2002, he played pretty much 15 or 16 games every year. 2000 was the outlier when he had 13 appearances. And then 2003 went down to 4 games, 04, 14, and even the volume of starts that they could rely on. Forget the games, because games sometimes is misleading. The carries, the workload. He went from 146 to 27 to 67 to 34 to 60. Those were the last 4 years. That is a noticeable drop-off.
Well, that's why it's important to note that Scadaboo does have an X factor in his back pocket, and that is he does see the hole well, and he's not always anxious to run into contact. This is a guy who will find the seam, find the crease, and is not afraid to run to daylight. Unlike some of the guys we were just talking about who were like a collision course every single time they were in the game. It was snap after snap, pound, 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 pound. Scadaboo does pound, but he also does find ways to get to daylight and will run through creases. He will not always run his shoulder pads into a telephone pole.
Plus, the other thing is he's got Tyrone Tracy as a teammate. And it's not as if Scadaboo is coming in and he's going to be the guy that's going to get 250 carries. They're going to play off of one another, assuming they're both healthy, and we'll see probably a third back too. So that's going to alleviate the workload. It's not going to continue the volume that he had in college and roll over here.
Not that they're the same players, but in 2000, when the Giants had Thunder and Lightning, Tiki Barber and Ron Dane, okay, those guys, it wasn't quite a 50-50 split, but it was pretty close. And the idea was that the team wanted to have an effective running game. They got some pretty good efficiency out of both guys. I mean, even Dane ran for well over 700 yards that year.
Sure.
I know his career went downhill after that, but that rookie season, Ron Dane was an impactful player.
Well, it's twofold, Paul, to piggyback off of your point. Number one, it's to keep the guys fresh over the course of the season and a game, but there's also something to be said, and if you speak to defensive players, let's utilize the Giants personnel. The Giants, they throw Cam Scadaboo your way, okay? There's that physicality. You really got to embrace him. You got to bring him down, even when he catches the ball out of the backfield. Okay, then 3 plays later, after you've just emphasized the physicalness of Scadaboo, now the elusiveness of Tyrone Tracy comes in. That's a bit of a headache and a quick changing the gear for a defensive player. So that's also why having a 1-2 punch is great, especially if stylistically speaking, they're not similar to one another.
Well, that's also one of the reasons why I tend to be in favor of trying to keep Dante Miller. His speed out of the backfield is a totally different level.
Yeah.
I mean,
I saw it up close and personal, so.
I know you did when you were in Columbia. I mean, I'm sorry. As much as we love what Tracy and Scadaboo have done, and, you know, obviously Singletary is a high-quality pro who's done a lot of things in this league and for a lot of good teams, Dante Miller has an extra gear that nobody in that running back room has. He does provide another facet of weaponry to the Giants' running game. I would love to see him stick, but I don't know. Are they going to keep 4 backs? We just don't know.
It's the numbers game. But I think he'll have a legitimate shot if he doesn't make it to be on the practice squad.
I think he's
given
a lock
he knows
for
the
practice
offense.
squad.
So,
again, for the second year in a row.
Let's head back to the lines. We got Jacob in New York here on BBKL. What's happening, Jacob?
Hi, how are you? How's it going, guys?
Doing all right. What's on your mind?
What's on my mind is that I love how we, as Giants fans, diehard Giants fans, you love to be optimistic, think the best about the season, think best about the team. But if really going down to it, you look at the schedule this year, the Giants are lucky to win 5 games. They're lucky maybe 6 games. You know, it's a very tough schedule and a very hard. They're on the road a lot and in the hard games. It's not an easy schedule for them. And my thought process is on that. If the Giants end up, let's say, in the top 10 again, do we go and draft a quarterback the following year? Is that the whole stardom that we pictured in our mind? Is that over with, or are we going to somewhere new? Because we're going to have an earlier pick. There could be good quarterbacks coming out of the next draft class that we could take. And now what do we do with the whole Jackson Dart? Even if we play him a couple games, he has an average or maybe even better than average year. So now you have a much better quarterbacks in the top 10 next year. What do you do in that position? And that's like I know it looks optimistic, but in the most realistic way, that could be the outcome going into next season. Where now, what do we do with Jackson Dart? Do we keep him or do we? That's what got me thinking.
Here's what I'm going to tell you, and it's way too early to think about.
And I'll let you go on that note, Jacob. Thanks.
Way too early to think about next year's draft.
Just a tad.
But if you wanted to line up some puzzle pieces and some dominoes, as he has no doubt tried to do, it's quite clear. The most logical place for the Giants to go, if they're drafting high next year, unless something unexpected happens involving Jackson Dart, is you get yourself a super stud offensive lineman. I think that's pretty obvious to me right now. That today, if I had to take a guess, it'll be a super stud offensive lineman, given the scenario that you painted. Because, look, no matter how well they play this year, okay, we're talking about Runyon functional. If JMS is functional, that's fine. But if you're picking high and you can get a blue chip, Pro Bowl caliber offensive lineman, it'd be pretty hard to pass up.
Well, I will say this. If we're going to go down the hypothetical road.
I know, and I hate doing that.
No, but
he wanted to.
My response would be, let's get to week one. I mean, we haven't even finished
Fine.
the preseason. No, but let me.
I'm with you.
I just want to respond. In terms of the hypothetical, remember, a lot depends on who the decision makers are, Paul. Okay? And once again, I'm not speculating or insinuating anything, but if there are no changes, the individuals that brought in Jackson Dart, okay, they're going to still support the piece that they brought in. That's not going to change. So I'd find it hard to believe that even if he plays 4 or 5 games, that the script would be flipped to now all of a sudden head in a different direction.
And how do you support a young quarterback?
By giving him stability.
And an offensive lineman.
Sure. No. Well, that's what I'm saying. No, but hypothetically speaking, if there are changes, when a new front office comes in or whatever it may be.
You're going to go the other way.
No, what I'm saying is they're not aligned necessarily with previous draft picks.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to at least keep the door opened that if there is a high pick and they want to go after the quarterback, it's not crazy. So do you understand? In order to answer that hypothetical, there's other movable parts that are going to influence where you go with that. Meaning it's a spider web. Thank you.
Exactly.
Okay, we got it in.
Can I have my royalty on that?
I will think about maybe paying you at a date to be later named. Okay. But I had to get that in because I thought it would fit in.
It'll cost you double
admirably
if you go to Layers of the Onion.
Yes, well, look at this. We're just rolling the puns off the tongue here as we near the finish line. Speaking of nearing the finish line, Wilson is in Roxbury here on BBKL.
Oh, we're well past the finish line with Wilson.
Yeah.
My two buddies. Hey, how you guys doing?
Well, buddies is used very loosely on this program, but go ahead. Yeah.
I try to be your friend. I don't know why you don't like me as much, Lance. What I do?
I think you're reading too much into what I'm saying here.
We're having fun
this is
with
not
you,
a therapy
man. It's
session.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you got, Wilson? What do you got?
I know we don't have any time, so I'm going to go right up. Paulie, I'm going to tell you, before I get to my main point, because you're driving me nuts, I'm going to tell you why we need Will Hernandez here. You know why? Because since Brian Dable's been here, the Giants are the softest team in the NFL. They get punched in the mouth and they don't do nothing. The other teams laugh about it on their sideline, and we don't do anything. So that alone is enough reason to have Will Hernandez here, because Will Hernandez, I know him, we know him as a rookie. There's one thing he's not. He's not going to put up with anybody laughing.
He is a scrapper.
The Giants side.
I agree with that point,
scrapper.
Wilson.
Okay.
He is a scrapper. Yeah. I could understand that being a benefit to any team, an offensive lineman who will fight.
Especially the Giants, Paulie. Especially the Giants. But anyway, Paulie, let me ask something, because you're driving me crazy. Last week, I told you and John, you guys sound like you're just blaming Daniel Jones for everything, and that Russell Wilson is going to fix everything. You told me, no, Wilson, that's not true. We don't blame him, and Russell Wilson is not going to fix everything. If Giant fans think that Russell Wilson is going to fix everything, we are for a rude awakening. Just now, Paulie, you told me that he's going to elevate everybody.
He has. Well, hold on, Wilson. Wilson, hold on.
Anybody, he's done
fixing everything. Wait a minute. No, you're making an accusation, and let me make sure that we've got the definitions correct. Fixing everything is not the same as elevating everything. Russell Wilson, at this stage of his career, Okay? He is not the same guy who played with beast mode with Seattle and went to 2 Super Bowls. Okay? He's not that guy. He is a lesser version of that guy, which means he's not a top 6 or 7 quarterback anymore in this league. He's not. He's not going to lift the team on his shoulders, bring them out of the quicksand on his own, and just will his way to victories. He's not that guy anymore. He's a guy who needs other people, right? A rising tide raises all boats. He needs other people. He needs to be an effective play action quarterback, which means the running game is going to have to produce early so that they can command the respect of a defense and give him a chance to operate out of play action. If they don't do that, Russell Wilson is going to be taking a beating, and he's going to be looking uphill every week. I'm going to make that very clear to you right now. Okay? So he does not automatically fix this place just by coming here. I've just explained it to you. I hope you got it.
I got it.
That's wishful thinking. Yeah.
So you know what, Lance, help me out over here. Okay, when you bring in a supposedly Hall of Fame quarterback, right? Because the quarterback that you had before, your head coach blamed him for the food being cold in the cafeteria. I don't care what everybody says. Brian Dable blamed Daniel Jones for everything. That's what a lot of fans like us believe. But forget about that. When you bring a Hall of Fame quarterback, right, supposedly, and it's going to help everybody, then shouldn't Giants fans hear, hey, listen, man, we are going to be a good offensive. We're going to be a good team. We're going to strive for the playoffs. If I have to hear all the excuses I heard with Daniel Jones, then why bring this guy? What's the point?
Well, I mean, first of all, listen,
help me out.
Well, I'm not going to help you out because I'm going to try to explain things. I disagree, first of all, with your generic statement that everybody is simply accepting the fact that Russell Wilson's going to fix everything. I don't even think when he was first brought in, that was the generic mindset. I think there's a belief, though, that his experience, he's got a lot more experience than Daniel Jones. I think we can all agree. He's played in several offenses. He's been around a lot of different offensive lines, personnel. So, that's different. But he's not automatically coming in. You put the key in the ignition and then everything else disappears and it's all rainbows and lollipops. I disagree with that sentiment.
Lance, Champagne gave him $30 million to leave. I said, listen, thanks. Take $30 million, leave. I don't need you here. What is that?
Well, and then he went to Pittsburgh. Hold on. He went to Pittsburgh, and look at what the Steelers did last season. You're not going to...
Did you see his last 6 games?
Well, Pittsburgh, of course, didn't go on to win a Super Bowl, but they were a playoff team, were they not? Were they not a playoff team?
They were.
Okay, so Russ did enough to help Pittsburgh, which also was erratic at the quarterback position before Russell Wilson's arrival. Okay, so that I think is actually a positive development if you're trying to go in the opposite direction. But I want to give you another example. When Aaron Rodgers went to the Jets, okay, I understand year 1 he got hurt immediately. Year 2, did he fix everything for the Jets? Now, Aaron, right, Hall of Famer he's going to be, a Pro Bowler, a seasoned vet. Did he transform the Jets single-handedly?
They fired the head coach in the middle of the season. That whole thing.
But hold on. You're bringing in other factors.
You can't give me that example.
What do you mean I can't give you that? I'm asking you for a yes or no answer. This is not convoluted, Wilson. The point was, did Aaron Rodgers, regardless of what else happened, did he single-handedly fix everything regarding the Jets that second season?
He could have, except that the coaches alone lost 4 games for the Jets last year.
You know what, Wilson? You know what I find hysterical? I'm going to leave you with this. And listen, I appreciate the phone call, okay? All the kicks and giggles aside here. You claim that everybody else is making excuses, okay, for the quarterback, for Daniel Jones, for Russell Wilson. Yet I ask you a question. You come up with every other reason and rational thought that has nothing to do with the question. I think it's time to take a step back, look in the mirror, and prevent the art of hypocrisy from coming to the limelight. It's fair to say, Paul, Aaron Rodgers, who is in the same boat as Russell Wilson, if not more impressive, needed help with the Jets, okay? He couldn't all of a sudden stir the pot alone and everything else was going to correct itself. So Russ is in the same boat here where there's an uplifting feeling in terms of experience, resume, but that doesn't mean even if he plays decent football that everything else around him is going to fall into place. That to me would be a naive perspective, whether you're a diehard Giants fan or you're just a football lover.
I've always said that the definition of an elite quarterback to me, and there are usually only 4 or 5 at one time in the league, those guys can literally will your team to win 3 or 4 games during the season just because of their spectacular performances. They can rise above whatever's going on and basically pull games out of their butt. And we know who those guys are right now. There's very few of them. Mahomes, Josh Allen, we know who those guys are, right? Very, very few. Russell Wilson is not one of those guys. Russell Wilson needs the running game to be respected so he can use his play action. He needs an offensive line that's going to give him a clean front of the pocket because he's a shorter quarterback. And if he's got to roll out, his receivers have to be able to run the scramble drill with him to make sure that they give him a clean passing lane. Russell Wilson cannot raise the Titanic on his own. He's going to need some tugboats to help him pull the ropes. We've made that very clear. Wilson's biggest problem in life is that he doesn't understand context. He doesn't understand perspective and the full meaning of how things are tied together to create a thought and a philosophy and a theory. He just hears 4 or 5 words and he immediately clings to that, and that's what he's going to attack. It's, it just takes a little more thought. That's all.
And there's going to be an adjustment period because Russ does like to extend plays. Even some of the offensive linemen. Greg Van Roden was asked, Paul, earlier this week, what's it like blocking for Russ? And he said, well, Russ, is going to extend plays. So that means that when the quarterback normally gets rid of the ball immediately, you can move on. With Russ, you can't necessarily move on. So there's a give and take with respect to that as well.
The spider web.
There you go. It's amazing. They bring in the Giants a guy with the name Wilson, okay? And Wilson can't even get behind him under those circumstances.
Whatever.
Can't appease. It's amazing. All right. That'll wrap up Thursday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. It's presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. And a reminder that the archive of this show and our entire podcast network is on the Giants mobile app, podcast platforms everywhere, and at Giants.com/podcasts. For Paul Dottino, I'm Lance Medow. Stay locked to Giants.com for all the latest, and we'll speak to you on Friday right here on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Have a good one.